Kevon, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you this evening at the United National Congress Forum. Honorable political leader, leader of the opposition, and our internationally and Caribbean-wise distinguished former Prime Minister, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, fellow speakers on the platform tonight, all United National Congress supporters, activists, and those streaming live here in Trinidad and Tobago and internationally, good evening. Tonight I will speak with you about your life, the lives of your dearly loved ones, members of your families and your friends who sadly and unfortunately passed from the COVID-19 infection. I ask you to kindly and carefully listen to me tonight. It is stated the right to life is the belief that you as a being have the right to live and should not be killed by another entity, including a government. Human Rights Act Article 2 enshrines the right to life, equality, and human rights. This means that your government should have taken strong, appropriate measures to safeguard your life, the lives of all, and by taking steps to protect you and your families when your life is at risk. If a member of your family dies in circumstances that involve the state, as hundreds have died, 3,700 plus, you may have the right to an investigation. The state is also required to investigate suspicious deaths, as occurred with hundreds of our COVID patients occurring at the various hospitals, emergency tents, emergency departments, homes, and ambulances. An articulated declaration greater than 2 centuries ago is that all men are equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those are life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We are therefore compelled to continue our fight and our struggle to ensure upholding of our constitutionally enshrined democratic right, the right to life. 3,700 citizens have unfortunately died from COVID-19 infection. Hundreds of these were preventable. The right to determine the circumstances of their deaths is embodied in Article 2 of the Human Rights Act, to which we have signed. For the last 26 months, the leader of the opposition, the United National Congress, and I personally have been from the 30th of January 2020 seeking answers from Prime Minister Rowley, Minister Dayal Singh, the CEOs, the advisors, and the RHA board members of their mismanagement, ill preparedness, lack of drugs, high mortality rate at the ICUs and HDUs, medical and nursing staff shortages, inadequate testing, poor ambulance service, poor oxygen supplies, mental health, lack of mental health, support to frontline staff, and many more. All exactly enunciated in the 105-page report of the 5-member committee. Exactly what we were saying and what we were asking questions for was spoken about, written on the 105-page report from the 5-member committee. But where is that today? Where is it? So we persevered as the alternate government, asking these questions from June 21. The opposition leader then in June 21 has been demanding a commission of inquiry, and I have been asking for a confidential inquiry into every suspicious death. From this constant and serious bombardment, Prime Minister Rowley wilted and hypocritically appointed a 5-member committee to examine this situation in 1 week, what we considered then as a puppy show. The management and other issues of COVID-19 they were asked to examine. When the committee asked for 4 more weeks, they were given that from the 17th of January. The report was presented on February 17 with 16 major recommendations, and to date, not one of those recommendations have been implemented, but I'll speak a little more on that. Following the findings in 105-page report of serious mismanagement and deficiencies in the provision of health care of COVID-19 infected patients in their report, No minister, not the UNC, not the Prime Minister, not the government, have come forward and indicated to the population what this report is about, because they are ashamed to tell the population of their deficiencies and the mismanagement and the causation of the deaths of the people in Trinidad and Tobago. Hundreds have died, and they have not come forward to tell the population, these are the findings of the report, and we're going to do something about it. To date, almost 5 weeks later, Prime Minister Rowley and D.L. Singh have failed to appoint any team or any committee to examine these recommendations and urgently implement the required life-saving measures recommended in the 105-page report. Nothing has been done since February 17th. Near 100 more citizens have died since February 17th, and nothing has happened. Rowley and D.L. Singh can be therefore considered guilty of continuing criminal negligence. And we repeat, this is an extremely serious matter. Tonight, again, on this platform of the United National Congress, I ask the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Acting Police Commissioner, you must urgently examine and investigate and bring all concerned to answer questions in court, possibly with the possible consideration of criminal action against whom? Minister D.L. Singh, Prime Minister Rowley, the CEOs, the advisors, the board members of the RHAs, all must answer, as they all had significant roles in the prevention of loss of lives and the serious mismanagement of the COVID-19 patients under their watch. Let me repeat, 5 weeks later, not a word from the government on the findings of the report, and not one implementation of any of the serious recommendations provided in that report. What's the COVID situation now? There's still COVID going around in the country. The pandemic toll is 3,708 as from yesterday. The ministry also reported 433 new COVID-19 infections. 29 of the cases were in Tobago. Total number of active cases in TT stands at 10,050. People still have COVID. 156 people are in hospital. 9,830 people are in self-isolation. 50% vaccinated, and 10% receive a third primary dose. And what about those in the hospitals? 100 deaths since February 17th, and the report. Kufa Hospital, 38 patients. ICU 7, HDU 3, Cora Hospital 16, Augustus Long 33, St. Anne's 4, Arima 35, New Point Fortin Hospital 0, St. James Medical Complex 17, Scarborough Regional Hospital 9, and Scarborough General Hospital in Signal Hill 4. This is the present state, and nothing is being done. COVID is very active still. 10,000 citizens are positive still, and over nearly 9,000 are at home. And now today you have the cry minister, who should have been fired a long time ago. He should have been fired before these were fired. Prime Minister Rowley, the people mentally have fired you already. They no longer want you as their Prime Minister. Your party no longer wants you as their political leader. And if you looked at yesterday's newspaper, one of your party organizers in Mayaro constituency has on a losing streak. You and your government have all shamelessly failed in your responsibility to the citizens, and you're continuing to do so in the provision of health, education, employment, support of the vulnerable, the aged, the socially challenged. In all sectors of governance, you have failed. Everywhere you turn in this country, there is widespread painful suffering of our citizens. Enough is enough, man. How much can the people take? Our opposition leader has repeatedly stated, when we return to governance shortly, the Commission of Inquiry will be appointed. Those of you responsible for the serious mismanagement, omissions, commissions will be held accountable for possible criminal negligence in the killing fields over which you have presided. Prime Minister Rowley deceitfully and falsely tried to blame the opposition for not appointing our members of parliament in 2019 to what was an attempted joint select committee on the Welsh report. Let me indicate, Prime Minister Rowley, in his manifesto of 2015 elections, stated they have appointed a committee and will await that report to determine the use of the Couva Hospital, which we knew was ready and ready to be occupied with all equipment. First they lied. They say that no doctors want to go there. They next said that there was no equipment inside it. But here today, Couva Hospital is the mainstay for the management of COVID patients. That is the lie and the hypocrisy that emanates from the People's National Movement, and from not one, but from all. From all. They speak false things on a daily basis. That report took about 3 months and was then brought to Parliament in 2018. And the recommendations contained therein were no different from the recommendations of the Gladys Gafoor Commission of Inquiry report under Manning in 2007, 2008. None of which was ever implemented by Manning and his PNM then between 2008 and 2010. It took Kamla Prasad Bissessa government, the People's Partnership government, to implement many of those recommendations that were contained in the Gladys Gafoor Commission of Inquiry. Let me remind the population, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, PNM has governed and managed Trinidad and Tobago for 44 out of 60 years of governance since independence. They have managed the health sector, and thousands of patients have died because of the incompetence and the mismanagement. 44 years out of 60. So when people want to say UNC, and so on, we have only had 10 years out of the 60 years to govern. 5 years under Mr. Pandey, or 6 years and 5 years under Kamla. So under Mrs. Bissessa. So all the irregularities and the weaknesses in the systems and the things in Trinidad and Tobago, PNM has governed over it for all that time. And in that report, only 2 substantial recommendations were made in that report. 1, find an international partner to manage the Couva Hospital, and 2, consider linking with an offshore medical school. 7 years later of Rowley's governance, we have no offshore medical school, none. Even Barbados now has partnered with 5 offshore medical schools on their campuses in Barbados. 7 years later of Rowley's governance, where is the international partner Rowley wanted for Couva Hospital? You have been a total failure. My friends, brothers and sisters, I can give you some statistics. I want to ask the Minister of Health to give us some statistics about the number of surgical cases that have been done between 2016 and 2021 under your watch in the various hospitals, and compare that with the amount of surgical cases that had been done under Mrs. Bissessa's watch as Prime Minister between 2010 and 2015. The health sector was moving apace, protecting the lives of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So, what were the major findings on that report? I want you to remember the past, ladies and gentlemen. Under Prime Minister PNM, before COVID 2015 to 2019, hundreds of patients were dying in the corridors of the hospitals, dying on trolleys and benches, waiting for days for emergency treatment. Hundreds were dying while waiting for major operative procedures of cardiac bypass surgery, dying while needing life-saving dialysis, hundreds waiting for cataract surgery. They closed down many of the health centers. Patients' diabetes and hypertension worsened, ending in deaths. And this is why today the comorbidities of diabetes and hypertension, because people were not well managed, they passed away from the COVID because of PNM, mismanagement of the diabetes and hypertension. They had no important lab testing reagents. None was available to provide lab reports for emergency management. Bodies were rotting in the mortuary. Electricity blackout at the San Fernando General Hospital. I'm taking you back to 2016 to 2020, when patients were on ventilators and operating theater tables, which could have caused major loss of lives. The roofs were falling in many operating theaters and in the wards. Inadequate chemotherapy drugs for cancer patients. Absence of basic drugs. 1 CT machine functioning for 10 hospitals. Closure of the central block of Port-of-Spain General Hospital, resulting in worsened health care for citizens of Port-of-Spain and environs in northwest Trinidad. Tonight, I want to guide you to a New York Times report of 19th of March 2022. Another COVID surge. Are we ready for it? Time would not permit me to read the contents of that, but the contents came from John Hopkins Bloomberg of Public Health. Words of advice to all countries: still be prepared. And Anne Raymond, an epidemiologist at UCLA, they said, we have been wearing rose-colored glasses instead of correcting our vision. But it seems certain that Rowley, the UNC, and their teams seem to be afflicted with some ophthalmologic problem. That word vision is not in the PNM's thought process. They have absolutely no vision. The Bloomberg study said to be reactive rather than proactive has and will continue to cost us dearly with continued loss of lives. In fact, Rowley and the UNC, by their overt inaction, seem not to care a damn. So this 2x4 druggist would have to cry buckets of tears for the saddening and unfortunate preventable deaths of hundreds of our friends, families, and loved ones. So continue your weeping, Terence, day and night. Hold your head in shame with deep regret and remind yourself that you, as Minister of Health, has presided over the deaths of hundreds of citizens who could have been saved. You remember us asking you to ensure the purchase of life-saving drugs of tocilizumab, remdesivir, methylprednisolone, dexamethasone, and third-generation intravenous antibiotics. Together, this would have costed the government approximately 10,000 per patient in medication to save one life. We asked Prime Minister Rowley, Minister Imbert, and Terence, could you not have spent 30 million to save those 3,000 lives instead of 30 million on Carnival? Isn't this a disgrace? Isn't this gross criminal negligence not to have done so when you boasted falsely to have spent 5 billion for COVID-19? So continue to cry, Terence. You have been an absolute failure. You should have been the first minister to have been fired long ago. May God continue to have mercy on you. So in concluding, ladies and gentlemen, our fellow citizens, our opposition leader, together with us in the United National Congress, will continue our struggles and continue our fight to protect and save your lives. We will continue to have the courage to fight for you, to fight for the poor, the disenfranchised, the marginals. We will continue to fight for your human dignity, respect, and justice. You must not walk alone. We continue to walk with you. We cherish you and care for you. I say to you tonight, every one of you, all of you, the time has come for us to take back our country from the hands of our dictators, from authoritarianism, from totalitarianism, from an anti-democratic government, from a perceived corrupt and destructive government, in fact, from absolute failures. Stand up with Kamala Bissessa. Stand up with the United National Congress, the one party that has a track record of widespread development, major achievements, care for the children, care for women, for economic growth, education for all, excellent health care, and deep respect for the sanctity of life and equality and justice for all. We are created equal in the eyes of God. Our journey continues together, and our victory for greatness will not be achieved until we take our country back. God bless you, our people. God bless our political leader, Mrs. Kamala Bissessa. God bless our nation. Good night. Everybody sing free.